created that through me
I
in
think
some
there might
sense.
might be a lower authority sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah,
Like I feel sometimes like if there can be a misunderstanding and then a gripping onto that misunderstanding, and so you could end up with the world misunderstanding uh, and trusting the wrong authority, and I could argue maybe from below. Um, it just because there is just this majority doesn't necessarily mean that it does not mean that it's good, right?
yeah,
Or it doesn't mean that it can't be better.
yeah, yeah. That was and actually, I just watched a little clip with Jack White. I was never really like a fan, or didn't really listen to much of the music, but it's interesting because he said that he never did drugs, and one of the reasons why is because, or like maybe he had thought about it at some point, but then he eventually decided like I'm not going to do that because he wanted to. Somebody had said like if you're on drugs and you write a song, like you don't know like was it you or was it the drugs, but if you're not on drugs, then you could say that was just from me, and so there is a authenticity to it, which lends credence to your authority. Um, but
That's a
you
strange
know,
one. That's a strange position.
yeah. Well, I mean, I was saying that as drugs as like a source from below in some sense. It's like a like because I mean I think people do that a lot with behavior. It's like when we go lean too far into like the evolutionary psychology kind of thing, and people want to blame all of their actions and decisions on like a materialist kind of determinism. Like I couldn't help it because my genes told me to do it, or which is the same thing that like what the prison guards say. I was following orders. They're denying your relinquishing authority, um, which may or may not hold up in the opinion of others who are trying to evaluate you. But um,
I had a conversation recently related to military, going into the military, and the lady I was speaking with had said she would not want her kids going into the military, despite her being in it for 10 years, and it's because of who's the head. And I said,
yeah,
well, I used to be like that, but I learned that we want good people in the positions in the military and have the capacity to say no. So there's got to be this capacity within us to speak up when we see the thing that other people aren't seeing, and be willing to go against the peer pressure and make sacrifices and do something that's uncomfortable.
yeah,
Like we
and that's
all
like
have that
yeah.
authority.
Well, what's interesting too is, and I was thinking about this when Jacob was talking about like how no adults should be atheists, and like where does this bad theology arise from? And so much of it comes as a rebellion against improper authority. People who are using authority improperly, or often relying too much on expertise rather than really working through problems. Because like if you think about like in
I
the
would say a delusion, a lie, and not true expertise, but but yeah,
yeah,
people will believe it's
no,
expertise when it's not.
well, no, I'm saying like okay, no, I'm saying like the churches like where they just say they have the pat like Sunday school answers that are just like this is the answer that's supposed to make you shut up and stop thinking. That's an appeal to authority, and it's rooted in expertise, or I'm older than you, I know the Bible more than you. We've had these things
I get that. I get
settled
that,
for a
but
whole long time.
I think that's all a lie, though. Like I think it's the wrong view of authority and expertise. Like a misunderstanding of authority and expertise, or at least a misunderstanding of expertise.
Well, yeah, but sure, sure. I mean, well, I think it's funny because I think a lot of true experts, well, maybe there's like I don't know, a lot of true experts are very reluctant to make statements of authority because
Yes.
they know there's so much variables. They know how complex things are. Now they might, like it is like, they do actually help with some obvious things, like, or like when Bart Ehrman talks about like the people that think Jesus literally like never existed, that is obviously a stupid thing to believe. Like that's but it's like he's not going to be saying with authority like this is what Jesus said. This isn't whatever. Like he kind of makes his case, but he doesn't speak with authority on a lot of the things that he kind of posits. He has a degree of authority, and which is based in his expertise.
I like testimony because we are, if we're being honest, we can try to be honest, and we are the authority on our testimony, and there can be witnesses. Like,
Yeah.
so I like these. I like that approach to theology.
Yeah, well, I think, but it is like if you think about like with military or something like that, that's a tricky situation. Obviously, there's maybe like one of the things you could think of is how strict is that authority, or like what is the consequence of like insubordination? Because if it's like execution, you're not gonna get anybody. You're not gonna find people that are willing to stand up. But if it's like
You will
whatever, you
find
get
some.
tossed.
Sometimes
Maybe
you, yeah.
sometimes, yes, when things get really really bad. But like if it's something like getting thrown in the brig or something, it's like then you might have people who are willing to risk it. I mean, that's kind of like the story of Esther, because she the king had the authority to. She didn't have authority to just speak as she wished. She presumed, that she took a risk by stepping out, and it paid off. But it wasn't. I guess you could say it was rooted in the higher authority that came from God, above human authority. But that's like, her initial fears or whatever of like, why, um, should I do this or not? When Mordecai gives her the push, like, if you don't do it, God's gonna raise somebody else up. So he was pointing to like what the real authority structure was, but that's something we have to always consider, because sometimes be following a higher authority means questioning a lower authority or an intermediary authority.
Well, here's what's interesting, kind of in a work environment, is if you question the authority. I've done it quite a few times where I question the authority. I do what I know to be good. I have success, and they keep me, right? Sometimes it becomes their idea, right? They're very happy, and it becomes their idea. So there, it's. I think it's good for you when you see something that others don't see, for you to disregard the kind of the authority structure that everyone believes in, to go do good, uh, and to do it with a confidence where they can get rid of me. I'm just going to do good, right?
Yeah.
A skill and a competence. Yeah, that's my approach, and it's what I mean when I say like this is one of the ways in which we can deal with the incompetence in general, is that we form our own networks and communities and do good without asking for permission.
Well, so my kind of position is, obviously we should focus our energy on the places where there is the freedom to act, like regardless. So with things like entrepreneurship or innovation, it's like there was no expert on social media until there was a creator of social media, and they are the authority on it until it comes under some other form of authority, like government regulation. You can kind of try. Nobody's really wrangled it in total. I guess like in China, no, even there, I know that they try to, and they have a lot of hard time kind of exercising authority over like those entities. But but it's like, you because some you can't make something that doesn't exist yet illegal, so
Well, I think you hit on something with the punishment that and that being kind of an incentive or a detriment to exercising your own authority, and there being a willingness to experience, suffering and death for what is uh, ultimate in your worldview, right? The big one is what's the ultimate, like which worldviews are the best worldviews? Like
yeah.
that's the really big one.
Well, there's always like kind of some of that thing. It's like managing risk. It's like your boss isn't going to give you authority to do whatever you want during the 40 hours when you're working for him or whatever, necessarily, going to business for yourself. You can take the risk of like, quitting, and then you don't have to worry about that authority. Then you're free to do what you want, but you're now, you're at the mercy of other powers or forces, like the
Well,
marketplace.
if your boss pays you 100,000 a year and then you save them $500,000 a year and only work 5 hours a week, they're going to be happy. So
They should be, yeah. And I mean that's why people hate like the like the stupid imposition of like rules. If they can't like I know some people, obviously some people, um I don't know what the like total response with the whole like work from home thing was, but after everybody was working from home, and then like some companies are trying to get their people back, and then a lot of people really resent that or push back, and they might decide even like, well, what I that was worth more, to be paid less somewhere else that'll still let me do that or something like that. Um, so because the if there's no reason for the authority, those in authority, to exercise that power, it's not going to work really well, I guess.
some,
That's, yeah.
sometimes there's a reason and there's not a skill or time to explain the reason. I would toss that in there.
Sometimes that's like, you just got to figure out what are these most critical things, times and places, like, because I think that is, man, like our whole system, like in general, is overrun with foolish authority, um, that is more detrimental. Like, and it's usually, and this is probably like where expertise can run amok. Like, okay, so I'll use the example that I know best of like OSHA. OSHA is this thing that's supposed to like prevent injuries in the workplace. And so they keep, they implement all these rules and all these things. And like some of them, fine, probably make, good sense. Others are like, um, completely arbitrary. Like I am right now, I'm working in a house that is, going to close like in a couple days. There is no scaffolding. There's outside. There's no loose masonry. But like technically, I'm probably supposed to wear a hard hat at least walking into this house and potentially inside the house, like, or
Oh
if,
man, I got the
it's like,
evidence, Mike.
well, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily, or that might not be not be a. It might not be. I might not be violating OSHA thing, but that could even be something where a particular house
I get your
building,
point. Your
a
point is that
particular company will be like, well, we don't trust our workers to know when it is and isn't appropriate to wear a hard hat, so we're going to insist that they always wear a hard hat.
yeah, they've got the same thing in my line of work. They will have auditors come in and they'll do their job. Meanwhile, I can go tell them things that they would not want to know about, and then I can tell them things that, yeah. So among the things they would not want to know about is the fact that they're doing a shit job. The auditors, they're actually doing a shit job, uh, and it's because this whole auditing business is connected into something like making sure that check boxes are marked for the capitalists who are investing and want to make sure that you know the thing they're investing in is they want to be able to trust it, even when the authorities who are part of that entire system could be made better. Like, right? So OSHA could be made better, for example, or the auditors in my business could be made better. In order for them to be made better, you would have to have some way for someone who's an expert to come in and say, I volunteer as tribute. We're going to make this thing better. But what I've found over the years is that the amount of organizations and people who actually have a path by which someone there can be feedback and learning and the growth of expertise, like it's rare, super rare.
Yeah. Well, and the alternative, like the superior method or whatever would be to spend more time like training people to know how to be safe, because there's a lot of rules that don't protect anybody. And there's a lot of knowledge that's missing that puts people at danger, because like if they don't, if our company hires somebody and they don't know how to use all the tools, we give them all the tools and then they could, just start messing around with it. Don't knowing how to use your tools properly is more important for safety than any rule of safety. Even like, the guards that they put on like saws and stuff like that, they're not as good of a protection as knowing why things go wrong, like how because if you put a board on a table saw the wrong way, it'll shoot back like across the room. It'll put a hole in the wall or through your body.
I had
a
I had a boss whose skill saw got shot back and went across his leg.
Yeah, and so
I've shot my hand with a nail gun.
But it's like if you observe and here, I've gotten some injuries because but every time it was because I was not following the proper procedures or whatever. So like it's like if you follow, if you have the wisdom and the knowledge, you then have authority over how to you become an authority essentially on how to use the tools, and then you are trustworthy to be using them. But it's like the cost associated with investing into the people to have the authority is not beneficial to like a bureaucratic system.
I'll get back to the conversation on education and computers and artificial intelligence on this. I mean, it's coming up where you can have cameras and mics in the place where the trades are happening, maybe mounted on the people, and you can have the feedback and training happening. So it's also an audit trail. It's an opportunity for training and learning. This is one of the things I said, how do you deal with corrupt systems, is you retrain the people who are incompetent because of the Peter Principle. It could inform your promoting, demoting decisions. I'm kind of looking forward to it, honestly. It's a hard problem, and this capacity to put expertise, to document expertise and grow expertise and leverage it through artificial intelligence for the purpose of learning and teaching. It's going to be big. At least I hope it is. This is my hope for the tech.
Well, and I mean, I think that's the thing, is that very few people have people as their goal. Like, because I think from a religious standpoint, you could make a case that like the people themselves becoming authoritative in some arena, becoming more competent, like is a goal in and of itself. But we are always having to, it's very difficult to maintain that goal in the right way. And some of that is like, I don't know.
And we have human limitations.
Yeah. And so, but like when everything is put beneath like a profit motive or something like that, then you get really bad results eventually, or it's very hard to get those more lasting results out of a system like that. It's just not equipped to do it the right way.
or we need to trust the right people in the financial markets like insurance. Cue Jacob Facciarocci. Basically, there's these
I heard
externalities and
my
costs.
name, but I wasn't paying attention. What'd you say?
Yeah, there's something I've heard you talk about with regard to like getting insurance right. So like, I don't think we actually. I think there's these externalities that people can benefit from putting the costs out into the public. And if you have the right, it would be good to have like a insurance company or an insurance system that's part of a financial system that would actually uh, make sure people aren't just like pushing these externalities out into the public, right? Like this is just yet another place where competence and expertise within the system could be helpful.
Yeah, the great thing about insurance systems is like if you force people to buy insurance that they don't need, it will end up being really cheap. So, for example, um, I have to, as a student doing internships in social work, I have to buy insurance. I got, it was either $1 million or $2 million in insurance um, for like $15. As opposed to, so as an insurance agent, I have to have insurance. And when I first started out, I was paying closer to $2,000. Now that I've been in the business for 10 years, zero claims. I'm paying like around $1,000 a year for insurance, right? Because the insurance ends up like in a competitive insurance market, you end up like insurance can be really cheap. But in order to create a um, an insurance market, and this is where the libertarians who love insurance lose their mind, is um, the only way you can have an insurance market is if it's highly regulated and you force people to buy it.
And ideally, it would be run by people with competence who are
Well,
good people, have skill,
the good
and there
thing,
would be a system of improvement where it would grow and get better over time.
the good thing about insurance is if you're bad at being an insurer, you will go bankrupt really quick.
That I can see that being true, and there's still being room for improvement, right? So if you were the best at insurance, what happens? Uh, right? Do you become the wealthiest person in the world if you're the best at insurance?
No.
Right. So there's an interesting thing in economics, and I think it's to tie it in. You know, Michael's talking about the profit motive. Um, I've also heard you mention recently, Jacob, that it would be if we could compensate parents, you know, for doing, if we properly doing a parenting job, you know, this would be the kind of economy that we would want for the world, right? And so we end up with these economies where we aren't paying people who do really important work what it's like something like a true value and like the grand scheme of things. Um, yeah, there's a and so like yeah, the profit motive absent from accounting for all the costs. Like, what's the true cost of like being a bad parent? If somehow that true cost of being a bad parent was paid, or the risk of that cost was paid, it would encourage the good parenting.
Well,
This
the parenting thing is an interesting thing because I don't know if paying would be good because as of right now, the motivation, parents, the majority of the success of our society comes from the fact that parents want to raise their children to be more or less decent people, like, and
if you have
know,
a society where parents don't care about that, then that's not going to be good for society.
yeah, but but I would think I would suspect that perhaps putting a monetary advantage to having children might cause that more so than not doing it.
Right. So you can incentivize bad behavior and create a moral hazard with your incentives.
Yeah.
But you could also create.
But the fact that it's like difficult. So that actually is like, okay, that's when you say we have a problem. Well, we definitely have a problem in our economic systems because, like, even right now, like our company, we're now getting competition from other companies that we're just selling cheaper products, and so and it's like, in this saturated market, it's like the competition is all in reducing costs, reducing quality, reducing, and so it's like, because it's because essentially it's monopolized or whatever. I mean, it's like you have to pay so much more to get like a high quality home, but once you get into the like low priced home market, then there is no like quality control or whatever, essentially. Like, I mean, there's like building codes, but um, the incentives are to cut costs and to cut corners rather than
you can also have you can also have building codes that say we're concerned for 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, right? So that's another point. It's like some things are just prohibitively expensive.
Well, I mean, it's just some of the things is like, okay, if you get into the position where it's like, I'm not going to work for, because eventually the cheaper product might save you some money. You save more with the cheaper labor, and then it's like, well, I'm not going to work for less money because I can't support my family off of that. And so then it's like, well, what do you do? Everybody's some guy that's willing to live in a tent can have my job or whatever, but you're just, there's money's going around the economy the same way. It's just all getting sucked up to the top or whatever. So,
I mean, it would be nice. I could imagine a future where how a lot of parents like to hand devices over to the children to allow a device to babysit the children. It's like these devices could get very good at parenting and teaching and gymnastics, sports, like coaching. So there's plenty of parents that they're parents just in name, really. I'd love to be able to put a good device in front of the parents, in front of the children, that would help those children, and then the parents would even appreciate the device being there, being of service and helping.
Well, like, okay, here's my idea or whatever. We need the AI girlfriend that like teaches guys to wean them off of pornography and get out into the real world or whatever. Like it's good, but you have to create it so it's like you get diminishing returns or whatever. But it's like it's going to be like like encouraging them and building them up or something, and
Hey, I mean,
I think it would actually probably work pretty well.
I mean, I honestly think that there's such thing as expertise and skill. So many different areas, maybe an infinite number of areas, and we will be able to encode it. We'll be able to use artificial intelligence to leverage it in order to be generative, right? So that's what's possible right now in this new era we're entering into. So, or that we've entered into, and it will continue to grow. They're calling it scaffolding. We're building scaffolding by which an artificial intelligence, the scaffolding itself will provide the expertise by which that artificial intelligence can operate and attempt to do good, to be generative, to be as good as the best parent, as good as the best husband, the best wife, to be able to coach, train, and be helpful, basically all around the board. my wife's response this morning was that a lot of people find purpose in their work, and so there's a lot of people that get concerned about this. That um, I think this
Yeah.
is we're at the center of every community has to be something like worship and play. It's like, because I try to imagine a person who's like even in a coma could participate in worship. So I don't like putting people's value associating with the work they can do.
Well, yeah, that's like, we do need to figure out incentive structures that accommodate for different people to do all sorts of stuff and things like that. It's interesting with Jacob where you're talking about your faith in ideals or your frustration with them or whatever. So it's a pretty interesting video if anybody wants to watch it. But I did a bunch of research about my hometown and the church that my dad pastored, where I grew up in. But it was founded by this guy who was a Unitarian Universalist. Well, that's what they call him. He does not define himself that. He says, I am neither a Trinitarian nor a Unitarian in his book that I've been reading. But, they tried to create this intentional community. And like he had too many ideals because he was pacifist and a Universalist and an abolitionist and like all the things. But it's actually interesting because the area that he admitted he had the least expertise, or the area, as I say, he was very flexible with, and like with a lot of the economic stuff like that. And the community, it was it was not a total success. Like they survived for like 14 years as like an intentional community. But then essentially what happened was some of the members owned a large mill in the town, and they became the majority shareholders and essentially transitioned the town into a company town. And so, and then in that regard, it was like, oh, well, it's still a success. And we have a good church here, and we have a good school here, and like, all this stuff. And so it's just like, the ideals backfired, but like where there was the humility and the flexibility, things were able to actually work out pretty well. So, yeah, but ideals are definitely, I don't know. You have to keep them aspirational, I think.
Strong opinions held loosely.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Open-handed. There's some things you probably want to hold close to them, like your cord.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and it was interesting too because he, the big thing was, so he wrote a pretty popular book about like pacifism or whatever, like non resistance or whatever, and then it happened. The Civil War occurred like while this community was going under or whatever, and that was like a time where it was like a lot of people were like, well, we gotta back off on the pacifism thing or whatever. It's a tough choice. I think, I think probably we have not reckoned with the cost of the violence compared to the, the result that we got. Like we have to defend we've had to defend the violence because the abolition was right or whatever. And that probably puts a little bit of that's put some strain on things, I would say, as our country wrestled with that over the next 100 years or whatever.
That's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
So on the list of things is no chattel slavery. Check.
Yeah. Well, but it's like, I think, but if you think about it, it's like, if I mean, some of the problem too was that the North had benefited from industrialization so much more than the South. If they had tried to if they had tried to find a way for the South to industrialize and to benefit from it, then their need for reliance on slavery would have dissipated, you know?
I'm actually I might have to go into the Civil War once there's one side that's advocating for the AI rights and I want to keep them as our slaves. And so it might be pretty bloody one day. I hope not.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not
Let's just
exactly joking
let's just
either. I'm
keep it.
not exactly
We'll just
joking.
keep it on in. It'll only be fought in video games. And then it's like, if we lose, we can't play video games anymore. The AI won't let us.
No, that I don't know if you caught the part where there's kind of some extremists who are very interested in artificial intelligence kind of becoming
Yeah.
what's left um, without any humans. Um, that's like really extreme. But the less extreme would be, um, you know, robot rights. You know, that's going to be big. I mean, we in a world where there's people who are bad at math and probabilities, you're going to have, and you already have it, people who believe that these robots are intelligent and does like deserve some kind of treatment as if they are like a human.
Yeah. Well, like, Neil had a stream a while ago, and I know it was kind of like that one that you sent me, where those guys were talking about AI and how it's going to affect workplace and stuff like that. And Neil was talking something about, like, driverless cars are going to come pretty soon or something like that. And I was thinking, like, well, okay, well, I've got probably good enough credit that I could go buy a driverless car, and then I could just be reaping the benefits of it, delivering people's Uber Eats or whatever, by itself or whatever. And like, that's a weird thing. It's like, oh, well, because I have a little, because I have sufficient credit, or I could take
Yeah.
out a second mortgage on the house if I wanted to, like, go all in and make a big investment. It's like I can reap all these rewards, but then it's like, oh yeah, but that's totally going to screw there's a lot of people that won't be able to take advantage of that, and then that would, like, create this greater class divide or something like that, and it's essentially, it's like, what it is, kind of like being able to buy slaves. But then in some sense, I would have to say, like, okay, well, if I don't have to work anymore, I might be impoverishing myself, or my children, if I'm giving them too much luxury and not enough responsibility or whatever, because I had the opportunity to do that. So, it really does come back to,
But
like,
I worry
what
that
is
it's already
the
happening, Mike.
goal? Well, yeah, I
I'll,
mean,
I'll, I heard my pastor talking about a four-person family living in a refrigerator box. He's got a story of going over into Mexico, and it's like, so I've been using that story with my family. It's like, you're arguing over this treat that you want. Meanwhile,
well, yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing, though. Even though with that family, would they be like, let's all split up if we can all, like, go live better somewhere, or do they value their togetherness more
the
than?
the hypothetical I proposed is I found this Coleman RV for like $10,000 brand new, and it's like, what if we sold everything we have and we invested in a bunch of these Colemans? You know, so there's this, like, we do have kind of a spoiledness, frivolity, all of us, and there is a calculation, a mathematical calculation where us having things and not wanting to sacrifice them uh, has an impact on people around us.
Yeah, and you know what? I bet, I'm sure there's a lot of people would say, and it probably is true. Like, oh, a lot of people would just take those things and they would just trash them and they would just let it run down and
This
everything.
is what my
Well,
wife said.
yeah, but I think that it's like, yes, that is true. But there probably is another. There's you could, because if you just look at, like, all the people who are desperately poor or whatever, that's true of some of them. Of others, it would be like the ticket to a better life. And then there's probably even a bigger majority that the thing itself wouldn't benefit them completely, but if the thing was supplemented with long-term commitment from people to like teach them how to be responsible, then they would get there. And if not, and maybe, and you do see this even with, it's like,
Well, some people need to be cared for as well.
Well, but and the thing is like you do see like a thing of like the parents or grandparents that have these kind of like struggles. Their kids, if they're able to provide a little bit of a better environment for their kids, the kids don't turn out exactly the same. They actually do turn out better. It's easier for their kids to grasp some of the responsibility and stuff like that. So, like, I think that there is like real improvement is possible, but it's more dependent on focusing on people. And then the kind of material solutions are important in that, but I guess having the goal to be for the people themselves is the most important aspect of it.
Well, it's what my pastor was talking about. He was talking about what we see matters. And so he kind of told the little story of being in traffic in Birmingham, Alabama, and trying to get out, but nobody was letting him out. And he's talking about some lady who was driving who just like would not look at him as he's trying to wave to get her attention. And it's as long as we ignore what's happening, then we can kind of, ignorance is bliss, right? And
Yeah.
we are creatures who can only pay attention to so much. We can't pay attention to everything. So
Yeah, definitely true.
So when are we starting Tectonic School?
Well, I don't know. My wife is going to be stopping her job for our church in a few months, and a little before the baby comes, and then she's going to try to help me dedicate some more time to figuring things out. Still trying to reach out to some other people. I talked to Aaron Wren, and he sent him something I wrote. He kind of gave me some feedback, and then he's going to share it in one of his newsletters. I just got a little email back from him, so that could create a little buzz. Who knows? And then I think I'm gonna reach out to Rick Walker soon here. He knows business stuff, so I just have been working on writing a review of his new book, and it's pretty good. So actually, I do really like his book. Like, it's kind of it's kind of like, is this like a Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Peugeot kind of like copycat thing? Like, in some ways, yes, but it has like it has like a real gospel message of redemption in it that is like missing from Peterson's stuff. And so I really appreciate it for that aspect. So I would recommend for people to read it. Yeah.
Rick Walker.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
9 Steps to Build a Life of Meaning. So it's 25% more efficient than 12 Rules for Life.
And it has some ingredient in there that was missing in the 12 rules.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he had a really, it was like, towards the end, he has a really good line. It's a forgiven man is more perfect than a perfect man with no need of forgiveness, or something like that. So yeah.
My pastor talks about grace and truth, and grace before truth. Something like that is similar. Well, the Tectonic School is something that I'm interested in. I think it's connected to all of these ideas. Your capacity to get it going too is in there as well. And then being able to like extend trust properly. It's all part of it, right?
Yep.
Well, I'm going to call it soon, Mike.
All right.
Do you want to do a shout out and some branding for your stuff?
Yeah.
Meh.
People can find it. It's my name, whatever. Sartori Studios. That's the YouTube now. So
Sartori Studios and Tectonic School.
yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Do good work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. See you later.
See ya. Bye-bye, people.